At the game you'll be at this weekend, Hodge, the Montreal Alouettes are 6.5-point home underdogs to the visiting Toronto Argonauts. These teams met at BMO Field last week, where the Argos ran roughshod over the Owls, winning 39-10 to punch their ticket to the playoffs. If Toronto can get another win this weekend, they will officially clinch first place in the East Division and host the East Final for a third straight year. Who you have straight up and against the spread?
I'm going to say the same thing about the Montreal Alouettes here that I did earlier about the Riders, which is they're not that guy, right? This is a 500 team with a few really big bright spots, a few holes on the roster, some really good coaching in some respects, coaching that's maybe been lacking in other respects. I do not see this being a particularly close game. I could see the Argos taking their foot off the gas partway through the game, as we've seen them do at times this year after building a lead, but I still have them winning and winning relatively big in La Belle Provence. I will take the Argos to win and cover this spread. I would consider taking Montreal against the spread if it went up to about 8 points. Right now it's 6.5. I'm very happy to roll with the Toronto Argonauts.
I was incredibly confident with my pick last week that the Argos were going to cover their big 10.5-point spread against Montreal. And of course they did, right? That was a dominant blowout win that showed just how big the chasm is between these two teams in the East Division playoff race. But in this situation, it's hard to beat teams back-to-back, and it's even harder to blow out teams on back-to-back weeks. I think there's a backdoor cover here for the Alouettes at home, even at 6.5 points. So I'll pick them to cover, but the Argonauts are the better team, and they'll win again this week.
The Rough Riders are 3-point home favorites against the visiting Elks on Friday. Saskatchewan is coming off a humiliating 45-point loss to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers at the Banjo Bowl, while suddenly the red-hot Edmonton Elks have won 3 of their last 4. The Riders won both previous meetings between these two clubs, with both wins coming in tight games. Which shade of green are you backing in this one?
I'm backing the lighter one because the Saskatchewan Roughriders need to make a statement after that loss last week. They can't afford to come out flat once again. They need to prove to everyone in the league that they are not the team that got blown out last week. And for the Edmonton Elks, while Trey Ford has looked good, he has struggled as a passer the last 2 weeks, and coming into Mosaic Stadium, that is a tough place to play for a young quarterback. I'm backing the Riders to win and cover.
Anthony Lanier did not practice for Saskatchewan on Tuesday. There does seem to be some concern that he will not play, though the Riders will get Pete Robertson back from suspension. I'm also going to take the Riders to win and cover. Full credit to the Edmonton Elks for what they've been able to do the last little bit. You also know that Chris Jones would love to go into Regina and get a win, but I do think as much as this game will be close, I think the Riders have more to play for. They still have hopes and dreams of playing a home playoff game. I will take the Riders, not by a touchdown, but I would be willing to go up to 4 points for Saskatchewan in this one.
The Blue Bombers visit the Tiger Cats on Saturday, with the Ticats 6.5-point home underdogs. Hamilton got a surprise win last week when they edged out the Ottawa Redblacks despite visiting the nation's capital on only 3 days rest. These teams met way back in the first week of the regular season, with Winnipeg coming out with a decisive victory. Who you got?
I'm interested to see who's going to start at quarterback here for the Ticats, because Taylor Powell, as much as he's played pretty decently as of late, Matthew Schultz got back onto the active roster last week in a third string role. I'm not actually sure that he even dressed, but that is at least an indication that he is going to be back soon. And I think that him getting into that offense with Omar Bayless, the young receiver, stepping in for Duke Williams, and I think looking pretty good, doing some promising things. Tim White having a massive game. We should give Tim White his flowers for that stellar performance against the Red Blacks. I think that could change things. That being said, the Bombers had a miserable performance last year at Tim Hortons Field. They lost this game by a considerable amount. I forget the final score, but I do remember that Dane Evans had 5 touchdown passes for the Ticats. I don't think the Bombers will make that same mistake. I'm skeptical the Bombers can beat Toronto 2 weeks from now. I do think the Bombers will do enough to win and cover in Steeltown this week. Though again, that pick I would say is assuming Taylor Powell plays. If Matthew Schultz plays, I might want to reassess that.
Jeez, what are we even talking about here, Hodge? Come on. Like, Taylor Powell has been a solid quarterback for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and I have complete faith in him. But this is the Bombers we're talking about, and I don't think they're going to let off the gas entirely after that blowout. And there's going to be an emotional letdown for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, who, did everything they could to pull out the unlikely victory on very little rest last week. Now that they've had a full week to recover, I don't think they're going to come out as fired up. I think this is a trap for them, and the Bombers are going to be smooth sailing in Steeltown.
The Red Blacks visit the Lions on Saturday night with the home side favored by 9.5 points. Ottawa has lost 6 games in a row, while BC is coming off a bye week. Do you have any faith that the Red Blacks can cover this wide spread, or will the Lions be too much to handle?
I think the Lions are just too much to handle. This team is going to be well rested. They have one of the most explosive offenses in the league when they're firing on all cylinders, and the Red Blacks in all phases just are not where they need to be right now. Dustin Crum is going to be eaten alive by Ryan Phillips' defense. This is going to be a big win for BC at home.
I completely concur with you, JC. As stated earlier in the show, I'm more or less done with Ottawa this season. They need to go back to the drawing board and get things figured out. BC is not going to make a mistake in this game. They were on a bye. They're going to come out prepared. They're going to come out ready to go. And I think that the BC Lions will more than cover the spread. I don't think this game is going to be particularly close.